glad to be here. And hope you guys are glad to be here as well. We're going to be checking out a few different things on the live today. We're going to be checking out shelters again. And recently, my sons and I, we've been building an A-frame house. I want to check out that. We've got some sneak preview pictures and a little bit of video and different things on that as well. And I kind of wanted to do the shelter thing again because look, the off-grid shelter thing because look, after last week's live, I had a lot of people comment and a lot of people email and send some stuff into me and stuff like that. One thing we didn't cover a lot of was underground shelters and also some other stuff that I want to hit during this live stream as well. And of course, as always, whatever you guys want to talk about, whatever's on your guys' mind, of course, I'm here to, just discuss it with you as well. As far as answering questions, I do the best I can. If I know what I'm talking about, I'll definitely answer it, and let you know what I know about the subject. But if I don't, then we'll talk about it. Maybe somebody online, you guys are super smart. You guys always give me ideas on what to do. And recently there was a commenter. Hey Jim, how you doing, man? Nice to see you here on the live, brother. But yeah, recently there was a fellow who was concerned over the baseboard heater I had because I'm piping in 205 volts of DC current, and he was very concerned about the DC arc, which is a thing. Apparently, I didn't know. But if you're using like AC appliance switches and points, thermostats, things of that nature, you can get into some trouble with the DC arc. And so I wanted to kind of like update you guys with that. But on that particular heater that I have, it's directly wired to the solar panel. There is no thermostat. There's no, break in the line. There's nothing controlling it other than an actual throw switch, a very long throw switch outside. And so I would like to test the arc capability on that DC current one of these days. Maybe I'll do a short video of, touching two wires and pulling them apart, or maybe getting a set of points or something like that and try to operate it. But I know my well pump works just fine on I did a video on it. I think it's like 36 volts. I had to get a buck converter to jump it up into voltage so that it would actually, work with my control box hey, Pedja, barely awake, but I'll endure, he says. Yeah, because Pedja did mention to me that he's going to be going to a birthday party today, or probably already has. And, of course, it's very late where you were at, or very early, one of the two. You tell me every single live stream and I forget every single live stream, but I got some pictures of Pedja's building methods that he uses, that they use where he lives. And we're going to be going over some of that stuff, and he'll be helping me kind of narrate that as well, filling in the blanks, if you will. And so with that, I'd like to let's get started with, real quick, I wanted to go over, let me get you guys up on the screen here. This is Atlas Shelters. By the way, how's my sound? Is it coming across too hot? I try to turn it up as loud as I can without distorting, but sometimes I'll distort it. And actually I got, back to my old mic. I had that other mic on and my whiskers were rubbing it and it just sounded terrible. So I appreciate you guys putting up with that last week. So Atlas Shelters, here's a cool deal. Let's go back to the top here. These are some underground shelters. I see this guy on YouTube all the time. Maybe you guys have too. And what's your guys' thoughts on underground shelters and building underground? To me, it kind of looks like a tomb, but again, that could just be my ignorance speaking here, because I don't know all the ins and outs. These are actually, they look very, very, very cool. Here, let's see here. There's a slideshow. If I can get it going. There we go. And pretty cool. They got a great big facility. They make these things out of iron and concrete apparently as well. If we go back to that picture right there, I just wanted to study that real quick. Here is their basic shelter that they've started off with, that I remember seeing when I was watching them on YouTube. And these are all reinforced steel, all welded, seams, everything is waterproof 100%, because that's a concern, especially when you're building underground, is that inflow of water. And they have these filtration systems. This is one of the the air ducts that brings in fresh air for the ventilation, and of course your stairwell. And oftentimes people will put these underground, and then they'll build their house on top of it with some kind of a secret door or something to get down inside of there. And it's probably a really great place. Like if you live in an area that's quite frequently, subject to being bombed or maybe raids. Like perhaps maybe people in Israel have something similar to this. I don't know. And I know in America at one time they would there was a lot of these shelters built, these underground shelters, because of the fear of nuclear war. And and it really depends on how much food you have in these things and how self-sufficient they are. And I know a lot of these things run on electricity, and they rely on electricity, which to me is kind of the Achilles heel of the whole operation, because I mean, when the petrol runs out, when the propane wears, actually they don't use propane in these shelters because of the danger of it, because propane's heavier than air. It'll actually go to the bottom and build up. But they actually use alcohol stoves and things of that nature, a lot like a boat. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like sailboats and stuff. I was like really into sailboats at one time. I was going to build one. And so they have all these different fail safes that, where are you at there? There you are. And so they're very nice inside, very luxurious. But anything luxurious, if you got nowhere to go and the bad guys are knocking on your door constantly, and that's the other thing, man. Like, how safe are these things? How secure are they? If somebody really wanted to get in, they could get a cutting torch and cut the lid open, and they're in. So supposedly these have escape hatches as well. And there's a picture of their air filtration system in case somebody tries to sabotage your air intake system. But if they get that close to you, you're a goner in my terms. They could just weld the lid shut and that'd be it. Just Berry container boxes, they are $1,000 each, Jim Thomas says. Yeah, and actually, I've actually thought about that because and around here, they're a little tricky to get, but I know in California there was because we were closer to the coast, you could get them for a pretty reasonable price. And some of those shipping container boxes they would take and they would weld it together like Jim was saying. And then you could, seal the seam. People had their different methods of doing that. And then you spray it with like an asphalt coating or something, and then you bury it, and they actually, apparently work pretty good. Let me see here. So yeah, and that's, I think, what they've done here as well. They've sprayed these entire things with like an asphalt type coating, to mitigate the rust and to give them some form of longevity. And there's another picture of another one, and the install. You guys notice the stairwell here, and so these have to be very carefully engineered as far as height wise. So all of these components fit together with the house that you're building. To be able to dovetail it into there. Pedja says, those things are good short-term, 1 week, maybe 2, if occupants are extremely disciplined. After that time, it is probably a tomb, as you said. Yes, to me, it looks like a tomb, man. I'd rather be like on foot, out and about, and regardless of the situation, if it's that bad, I guess they got me, right? I'm a goner. But these things are very popular, and for good reason, because of all of the unrest in so many different countries. I mean, in my country, in the United States, of course, a lot of unrest with the presidency and the election coming up and everything else, and everybody's concerned about what's going to happen, on both sides of the parties. And so, but here we have, and to Pedro's point, I mean, after about a week or so, you're going to get on each other's nerves pretty darn quick. Cabin fever is a real thing. I can tell you that for a fact. Up here in Montana, we do experience that, and they are showcasing their gas tight and decontamination rooms. Now, like I said, in like nuclear fallout situation, especially some of these modern nuclear bombs, of course, if it was a direct hit, you're done. But if it was a nearby hit and you're wanting to get away from the dirty air or whatever, for the time being, maybe a week in the shelter might save your life. I don't know. And then you reemerge. Now the bombs of old, that they used to drop, the dirty bombs, you know, they would contaminate areas for very, very long periods of time. But the newer bombs, the H bombs, as they call them, from what I understand of them, again, my ignorance speaking here, but I hear that the radiation mitigates itself pretty quickly. And here they are with spray foam. So this is the whole treatment that they've gone through with the asphalt coating and then the spray foam. And these things are super expensive. I mean, how in the world can they not be super expensive, guys? You notice right there is their stairway. Looks like it's connected somehow to the deck, maybe a little trap door where they pull the deck up and, you know, secret entrance, boom, down in there, and they'll have some landscaping and probably fill all this in, and nobody will be the wiser. At least that's what it's supposed to be like anyways. So underfloor storage and water tanks and on and on and on, and toilets, you know, again, all like this toilet, it relies on probably electricity to pump it up and out of there. And so the loss of electricity would be catastrophic. Cement castle, 10-inch thick walls. Yeah, man, get above ground. I've always dreamed of that too. Like, seriously, like if it, like where I'm at now, like no building codes and you can pretty much do whatever you want. Like literally I thought about like building like like a castle wall, you know, I mean, if I had untold amounts of money. There's probably better things to do with your money than to like waste it on a big, you know, castle wall. You know, I think people can get too obsessed with prepping. I think it's, you know, and we talked about prepping in the past. It's definitely a good idea to put some things away. 1000% a good idea. I would never tell anybody not to. But these folks do get awful carried away, and they kind of put all of their salvation, if you will, into these bunkers, into these castles, into whatever it is. But yeah, man, you know, just like the castles of old, and that was back in the bows and arrows and crossbows and trebuchet days. Those things were never impregnable, and I would imagine with all the modern toys that our military and different people have, that they wouldn't be impregnable now either. And so, yeah, much rather just be out in the woods, man, in the mountains, just on foot, and you know, with a little backpack. And I mean, if it gets right down to it, you know what I'm saying? All right, let's talk about now that we got Pedja on here. Let's Pedja. Would it be okay if I put your picture online? You're wearing a very snappy suit there. I'll start with some of these other pictures first. And in fact, you got some great fashion sense there. Yeah, I'm somewhat jealous because I've always kind of been, you know, in the grunge stage. I guess my whole life I've been, you know, I've dressed up a few times. Of course, I go to church and I'll put my best clothes on. I actually have a suit and I just don't wear it very often. I feel very awkward in it. But yeah, Pedge is a snappy dresser. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, so here's the car on his little thumbnail that you guys see. And last week he was telling us about these blocks, these clay blocks. What's the type of clay that was? I'll think of it in a sec. But obviously there's some holes here, and I think you were saying that these holes were filled with some kind of polystyrene or some sort of an insulation. And let me see. And Pedge says, "Laugh out loud." Okay. I'm assuming you're talking about me bragging you up on your fine dressing. But yeah, so I've seen similar stuff go down here in America. They have some buildings that I know have been built with this type of, you know, material, and of course here's a different style of block. Now we're seeing these on YouTube a lot as well. These are these very lightweight block, kind of an insulation, you know, concrete kind of, and insulation all in one. And I believe they use an adhesive, and I think they're calling it here. Let me get my spectacles on. I brought my spectacles today. I think they're calling the adhesive, oh, you know what? I don't even have you guys. Sorry, man. Sorry about that, guys. Let me go back. Let me kind of, I thought I had you all on my screen. Okay, so here's Pedge's little car here. Just wanted to show you that real quick. And so was it okay if I show a picture of you, Pedge, on there? Because you got your picture, and not sure if you wanted to do that. I just wanted to ask your permission first. But okay, so once again, so here's the terracotta building block, and we'll go through these pictures here. Here's somebody actually doing the construction. Here's a building, and here's one of those lightweight concrete blocks that are actually insulated. As you know, the insulation is integrated inside the concrete. They're very lightweight. I guess they actually float on water. And here they are installing them, probably with some kind of an adhesive, probably similar to like a thin set mortar. You guys had a name for it here. It's called a glue / mortar to build with. We call it Cyporix, which was the name of the original domestic product, and now it is called Yatong block. Some company bought the factories and monopolized it. Okay, yeah, kind of like the vice grip pliers. And so every time you see an adjustable locking set of pliers, and you know, our shop teacher used to get on us about that, because it was we were told that we couldn't call it a crescent wrench. It was a brand name that first came out with the tool, but we had to call an adjustable open end wrench, or you know, the locking pliers, adjustable locking pliers, instead of a vice grip or a crescent wrench. So I'm pretty sure it's that same way. So Pedge says we can show a picture of him. So there he is, very handsome gentleman there with his suit on. And like I said, I'm very jealous of your style there, buddy. That's a fantastic looking suit. I've got a nice looking suit too, but like I said, I'm just not comfortable wearing it. I just feel out of place. I'm a dirty hillbilly. Roof tiles, these are very common in California, not common at all here in Montana. So it's very, you know, very geographically specific. Now, of course, you know, when you have houses like this, the roofs become very, very heavy. And so the building is engineered accordingly. I just think it's funny that in California, where some of the earthquakes are, you know, are some of the worst in the, you know, known in the world, that they put such heavy roofs on their houses, and that's always kind of cracked me up. But oh, Pedge said it was a wedding. Okay, so that was your picture at the wedding. Gotcha, buddy. And of course, here's some multicolored. This is a different, you know, this is kind of like a modern style of roofing, you know, with the multicolored tiles, and I think it's kind of reminiscent of the oh shoot, I keep forgetting to put you guys on the, all right, sorry, let's go back again. So yeah, that's the tile roof I was talking about. This is one of the tiles that is very common in California. And they have different styles, of course, you know, slate and different things. And here's the multicolor roof tiles. Let's hope I can get it together today and stop doing that to you guys. So there we are. And yeah, so that's a little bit of a rundown. So here, we'll take a look now at the, let me see here. Let me pull up. I'm not a real fan of this latest version of Windows, because it's just about the time you think you got it figured out. There we go. So here's a sneak preview of the A-frame construction. Now, we used some used lumber here. We had quite a bit of snow. So we're out here building in the snow. I'd almost rather build in the snow than the weather that we were in today. It was nice and sunny, but it was like 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was ridiculous. And the mud. I do not like the mud. And when you're tromping around in the mud trying to build, it is an absolute nightmare. So here's some of that used lumber that we repurposed. And so we doubled up some 2x10s here, and we have 2x8s, 2 foot on center for our floor. And so we'll just jump along here, and I'll just kind of, but I'll be making an upcoming video on this whole, must add water on the lens, nailing down the floor there. And so this floor size is a 20 by 24, uh, which which is about 500 square feet on the base plan. You know, I mean, he's building this out of pocket, so it's just you know, what drives a lot of the size of the buildings around here for the people is the actual cost of them, because everything is pretty much out of pocket. Okay, what's this one? Um, Yeah, so all the floors here we glue down. That's to keep the squeaks down. If you guys are familiar with building, you know that that's very important. You don't want to be walking on a squeaky floor. And it's all T and G. And so pretty basic construction techniques there. We kind of wanted to show you guys this Craftsman saw my wife bought, and I thought, oh, that's a cute little toy. And it wound up being a pretty good saw, actually. It kept right up with the DeWalt's, especially with the 4-amp battery. So that was cool. Let me see here. So another little, again, I'll be making a full size video on this. This is the A-frame that we're actually taking measurements, and we're getting ready to make a templates. Once we cut these will be our templates, and then we'll also make a jig where we'll jig it down to the floor so that we can put all of our cut pieces that we use after cutting them from the main templates to construct the A-frame. And I'll show you kind of how we were doing that. Now, you know, I've never built an A-frame before, but this darn thing was just it's been a lot of fun. And would have had plywood on it by now, but the weather has just been nasty. We haven't had a whole lot of time to work on it. Again, if it was snowy like this, we'd be out there every day. I can work when things are frozen, but when it's muddy and it's windy like it is today, I mean, we did as much as we could, but we just couldn't take it. What we're cutting here is an actual gusset, and you guys will see where it goes here in just 1 second. There we go. And that goes on the peak. And so we'll have a gusset on both sides, and this is actually for the very end of the gable. So the first one you make and the last one you make have to be opposites where this gusset will be placed, because then you'll put the OSB over the top. And Jim Thomas says, I never use OSB. Real wood or plywood, wood chips and glue are a sponge. Well, OSB has its strengths and its weaknesses, Jim. No doubt about it. There's a lot of people that do not like OSB. For its purpose that we're using it here, I think it's more than sufficient. But yeah, you got to keep this stuff dry. Now, this floor has already been, and typically when I do floors out in the weather like this, we will always put Thompson's water seal on it so that it will kind of hold up to, 4 or 5 or 10 rains or however long it takes you to get the structure built. And good grief, what am I doing? All right, so I'm putting the cleats down for the jig. As you can see, we're still working on the first one. We've got our second floor piece in. I guess I could turn the volume on and let myself explain it. But here's the 2x8. The 2x8 floor, the upstairs floor, gives us about 7 feet to the peak here, which will be pretty good for the kids and for Clancy as well. And you guys will see as we're putting this thing together. Pedja says water resistant OSB is available, and that's true. They have the zip system, what they call the zip system, and it's actually waterproof, considered waterproof here, and it's that green or red material. I think different colors for different, I think they have the red for the roof and the green for the walls. I don't know. Anyways, it's kind of expensive. But yeah, as long as you keep the water, off of it the best you can, then it's not too bad, But yeah, real plywood, we all miss the real plywood days, when you know, CDX and ACX, and I mean, you can still buy that stuff, but it costs more, and you know, and just almost nobody uses it nowadays. Let me see here. What are we doing here? So we're nailing the, and we'll probably come back, put some timber screws or some through bolts in these. We don't want to just rely on the nails alone. But once we started building these trusses, if you will, the process went real fast. Okay, where's my last one here? Skip forward. So we're gluing that down. We're putting some screws in it, and this is probably big time overkill for that peak right there. We probably could have just drove a few nails in, and then the plywood would have held the rest. I mean, in the old days, that's how we did it all, and those houses are still standing. So big time overkill, but it does kind of keep the wood from twisting. You know, it does definitely anchor it up there at the top, keeps it from misaligning. So we've got the first one here. Wife and I went up there the other day, and we got a few trusses up, and we ran out of screws. We were trying to surprise the boys, but basically what we were doing here is cutting the blocks that would space each and every single one of these, and this is what makes it so nice and so quick. The build process, that is and it worked out pretty good, to be honest. Here we've got 3 trusses up, and you can see the blocking in between. And we started out putting the blocking on the trusses before we tilted them up, and that worked out pretty good. But then we got back up into here, and then we actually started putting the blocks on the on the existing trusses. Yeah, and so we'll tilt the truss up, and then we just screw the block in. This gives us our spacing right on layout, just 22.5 inches. Double check your layout every now and then. Make sure you're not growing or shrinking, and all is good, you know. But I just set up my chop saw, and we just cut a whole bunch of these on the chop saw, and didn't take long at all. I think we needed like 140 or something in total, and so it just took the wife and I, maybe about an hour to get them all cut, and we were good to go. So let me see here. So this was today, and we were putting up the last of these trusses. And again, we haven't been working full days. You know, just the weather has just been awful. And of course, Clancy has to work. I have to work, and my son Levi has to work as well. And what am I doing here? Oh, okay. I'm putting a block at the base here where the trusses will meet. This is called pressure blocking. Man, before we had joist hangers, everything was pressure blocked. That was like the way to go. Pressure blocking was a great way to go. Very, very strong. I think I have a short video of us actually putting the truss up here. But yeah, you know, and that's what, I mean, I've really learned to fall in love with this style of building because, I mean, just constructing this, you can see our blocks are in place up there. And this was a little sketchy, especially with the wind blowing. We had like 50-mile-an-hour winds up there. We lost one truss, and it came tumbling down and kind of hit Levi in the hand a little bit. But I think he'll live through it. Long ways from the heart, I told him. But yeah, we're just easing it in place, and you know, already spaced, and just pop a couple screws in there, and we were good to go. These guys misaligned it here just a little bit, so Levi had to push his in. We were having some communication issues, and he figured it out and popped it right in place, and away we go. And of course, you guys can see the upstairs loft taking shape as well. And so it makes for a pretty roomy place. I mean, just for Clancy batching it like he is, it's a great way to go. So there he is again. putting the blocks in. So we've already seen all this. I won't bore you guys to tears too badly with that. But yeah, man, that's about it for the sneak peek on that. So I also had a request to do a kind of a review on a wind generator, but I think I'll leave that alone because I don't know. I love wind generators. And one time, like back when I was living in California, I was like so into them. I was actually making the self-pitching blades and everything else. I think I'm going to start a build here soon, especially when I'm done with the boys' place, maybe sometime in the middle of the summer. Get back into building those things because I built quite a few of them and never got any on camera or too many pictures really to speak of. I was putting pictures on Facebook on my old Facebook account, and then I kind of got rid of my account because everybody was scaring me to death with all this, Facebook's a profiling, website, and they're just profiling us so they could round us up and put us in cattle cars and ship us off to the concentration camps or whatever, which it's not like that hasn't happened before in the past. You know what I'm saying? And, but who knows? Maybe I'll get back into it hopefully here and we'll start building some wind generators and start doing some of those type of projects. But as far as off-grid living and the type of houses to live in, I mean, we've looked at all the different types. And of course, I didn't have any today, but maybe one of these days I'll go over the straw bale house again. And some of the ups and downs that I had for that. But I think the type of building is very climate specific and very geographically specific. Obviously, if there's like tons of rain, like in Northern California, you wouldn't want to build a straw bale house there. I'm not so sure you'd want to build it here because of the freeze and the thaw, especially with mud plaster. Because as soon as the water gets in there and it freezes, it's gonna scale, off the walls. There was a few people up here that built mud houses. In fact, we called it the beehive. This guy actually built a what do you call it? One of those rammed earth, not a rammed earth. It was he uses those, darn it, I can't think. Feed sacks, and they'd fill it full of dirt, and then put it on the wall in a brick pattern, and then ram it into place. And that held up for maybe 5 or 6 years. I know it started to collapse. They had an upper story up there, and some of the structures were actually buckling and everything, and so it was very unsafe, and the front door was hard to close. You could definitely tell this thing was under duress. And because when it would rain, the thing would just weigh like 5 million pounds. And of course, the freeze and the thaw didn't help it at all, and it unconsolidated everything. We've had some tire houses up here that weren't that great. It says you have a smartphone, therefore Facebook isn't the only data collecting thing. Yeah, absolutely, man. So if we want to like go off grid, like truly off grid, we'd have to get rid of the cell phones and our TVs and any smart products at all, and just all chuck them out the door. You know what, man? Screw it. I'm going for broke. I got back on Facebook but under a different account name. So obviously lost all those pictures of all my old builds that I was putting on there. And because once you give it to them, they own it and you can't extract them off of there. Unlike like YouTube, you can re-download your videos. You kind of still own your content. Unless they don't like it, then they just erase it and you're never going to get it back. They don't even give you the chance to recover it. They just pretty much boom, and they take it down, and that's that. Which, kind of sucks. I think they should give you like a 24-hour warning, or at least put it in quarantine, give you an opportunity to be able to download it, before they erase it from their files forever. But it's all good, we just have to follow the directions, if you will, of the YouTube protocol, the guidelines, if you will, so you don't say anything that is going to get you checklisted or any of those type of things. This channel's had a few videos taken down, and so yeah, it's been threatened, and I don't know, I've had this channel up for probably going on 13, 14 years. Just putting different stupid things on there, and a few videos kind of hit and took off, and looking back, I mean, I can't even believe I have 20,000 followers right now, over 20,000, but it's pretty cool. But who knows? I'm trying to get more active on here, and maybe one day we'll have a lot more on the channel and a lot more information, because a lot of this stuff I have on here is really super old, and of course it's not like up like the battery information. Some of the old videos I did on the battery, I might even just take them down, because now with this new lithium, everything's changed. And that's another thing. Like, I was thinking about those batteries, and I'm like, well, okay, so now that I've changed my battery, or am decided to change my battery, now I got to start looking at my charge controller, because the way you charge lithium is different than you do lead acid as well, which isn't a huge deal. It's actually one of the cheaper part. I mean, you can buy an inverter charger for $500 from GrowWatt, so it's not too terribly expensive, but it does. Everything costs money, and money, like they say, does not grow on trees, as you guys know. You guys are probably all working class like me. And so every little dollar counts, and so, I'm always looking for like the cheapest way out, and maybe the cheapest way is not always the best way. So, I got to sit myself down and give myself a talking to, like, okay, so this, and that's why I like the A-frame, because it was inexpensive. The walls are essentially your roof as well. And it's quick and it's easy. And I think people without a lot of building skills can probably put one together. And I mean, my sons and I were experienced builders, but I mean, this thing was just dead easy, and I think almost anybody could probably put one together with a little bit of instruction on what to do and what not to do. Just standard building practices, basically. But yeah, if here in Montana, obviously, I think I'm kind of a little jealous of my son's A-frame, to be honest. I think I would go for it. Oh, but going back to the batteries, yeah. So did I already finish that story? I don't know. But anyway, so I got to change all my infrastructure out there. So the charge controller, and I might get a new inverter and keep the old inverter just as redundancy. We were talking about redundancy and the importance of that. Redundancy is super important, especially like water systems, power systems. The very vital things that make everything happen. And I would even say like power is optional if you have your house set up correctly. Like my propane heat, I can operate it without power, which is a big bonus. And I have the electric baseboard heater upstairs, which actually keeps the house quite warm. If I start a fire in the morning, or even on a very cold day, the baseboard heater, as long as the sun is shining, will actually keep the temperature quite comfortable all day until the sun goes down. Almost immediately when the sun goes down, you can start feeling the chill just kind of creep in through the walls. And so it's back to the old fire again. But, heat and water are, and shelter, obviously, probably some of the most important things of off-grid living, and especially in like a disaster scenario. If the economy is going to crash, which I don't know, man. What do you guys think? I mean, this economy does not look that great to me right now. I mean, it looks like they're doing everything they can to destroy it, regardless of which side of the political party you guys are on. And I don't really subscribe. I've said this before, and every single live stream I do and I bring up politics, I lose subscribers. But it's like, it just amazes me how easily people get offended. And but whatever. I mean, if somebody's going to get offended about talking about current affairs and like wise moves, not necessarily like who's going to be president or anything like that. I'm not even into that stuff anymore. Like I could care less. I think it's all predetermined anyways. Like they're just going to do what they're going to do. And I think we're just pretty much just have to succumb to whatever they decide. And I just think it's one big theater that gets everybody all riled up and angry at each other. And it seems to be happening almost universally worldwide now, on a worldwide scale. Whereas, certain countries were always isolated from one another, but now everybody's connected in this, this uniformity, almost, where, the Russia and Ukraine thing has seemed to affect so many people, and so many people here in America, especially, have formed opinions on it, on what's really going on, and they're fighting over that now, who's right and who's wrong, and with the Palestine and Israel conflict as well. People get very opinionated. Of course, the news doesn't help anything when they're showing the left party one variant of the news and the right wing party the other variant of the news. And so it's always, hey Scrappy, how you doing there, buddy? Oh, come here, Scrappy. You guys ever see my little doggy? He's an old timer. He's this dog here is about 12 or 13 years old, and he's the daddy of all of our little puppies. We had a whole bunch of little puppies, and yeah, he's a pretty cute little fella, but he's getting a little gray around the muzzle, and he lost sight on one of his eyes, but he's hanging in there. He's still pretty tough. But are you going to be a brat? Are you going to be a brat during the live stream there, kiddo? So, I don't know how you made yourself down here. You never come down. All right, Scrappy. Well, I guess you can sit on my lap as long as you don't get too obnoxious. But yeah, and it just seems to me like, why not just, because if all that stuff is predetermined, and I kind of think it is, especially if you look at some of these, like, um, the episodes of The Simpsons. You can call that conspiracy theory if you'd like or not, but yeah, cool assistant, Pedja says. Yeah, for a fact, man. You can look at all those conspiracy theories, but if you look at it intelligently, like 911, like they literally seems like they predicted 911. And if they predicted it, then they must have planned it. You know what I'm saying? And the Trump presidency, when Lisa Simpson on The Simpsons, if you guys have watched The Simpsons, Lisa Simpson is one of the characters on the cartoon show. She ran against President Trump for the presidency, and she lost. And President Trump became the president. And it shows him coming down the escalator and everything. But she was dressed just like Hillary, and so. And there was more. There's more. So to me, like, all this stuff was planned. So if it's planned, then we have no say so. And the fact that they're giving both sides, different sides of the story, is just creating this conflict, which in turn just creates division. And there's a reason why they want the division. And it's getting harder and harder to ignore all the time. I mean, for me, it's something that needs to be talked about, but I know not everybody is into that, and I know not everybody is willing to talk about it, and maybe that's because there's that little mechanism inside of us that kind of wants to put our head in the sand and pretend like nothing's wrong. I mean, it's a human thing. It's not just like, oh, that person over there is just avoiding the truth. No, that's the human element in that person that's actually functioning and making them want everything to be normal. It's just a common trait amongst mankind, and me too. And I'm doing the very same thing. With my day-to-day living. You want things to be normal. You don't want things to be screwed up or messed up. But you have to sit yourself down at some point along the game and say, okay, well, there are some bad things happening, and there are some bad actors out there that are playing these games, and apparently it seems like we're the pawns. If we look back in history, we can learn a lot in just history. Everybody wants to believe that we live in this modern age, that we don't repeat those same things back. We don't do the same things that we once used to. We're much more sophisticated than that. But you look at Rome, for example, and Rome was a very sophisticated state. It was a very sophisticated country. A lot of what America has in it today is borrowed from Rome. The fact that we're a republic, the fact that we have the court systems, the way they work, a lot of our laws, the citizenship, the welfare systems, a lot of the different things. Excuse me. A lot of the different things that we enjoy in this country are actually borrowed from Rome. So Rome was a great place to live back in that day and age. But the way Rome fell is looking very similar to the way much of the world, the sophisticated world. Okay, here's something interesting. That is why they burned witches all over. It is the projections of our fear. Yeah, the Salem witch trials and on and on. And so here's another element about the human nature. In the vampire trials, like you see in Ireland, like you see in, I want to say Czechoslovakia, near, because there's Transylvania I found out was a real place. Is that the Czech? You would know better than me, Pedja, actually. But but the witch trials, the vampire stuff. I mean, people do get irate. They do get fanatical. People do tend to get you know, go a little too far with a lot of most of empires going down the similar way. Yeah, I agree. And that's what's scary about this whole thing is it does seem to be planned. It does give one the impression, and I don't, again, I like you guys, you know, have to understand that I don't really subscribe. I watch news from both sides only because I want to like get to the truth. Romania, thank you. Um, and yeah, so in Romania they had the, you know, the van, and so they're digging up these graves, and they'll find these wooden stakes, and they'll, you know, people's mouth wired shut, and you know, after the person would die, because they thought that they would rise up out of the grave and suck the blood of little children and stuff. And so um, and it, we have to understand that, you know, uh, we sometimes look at people of old like they're complete idiots, you know. But then we have our modern populace that are making a lot of the same mistakes. You know, they're doing a lot of the same things, and so to me it, you know, it requires self-examination. It requires it requires humility. Really, quite frankly, it requires sitting down with somebody who disagrees with you and really having like an honest conversation, and digging into their mind and seeing what makes them think the way they think, you know, and being honest about it. Because we just can't say like the other party is just stupid, you know, because that's not how that works. That's taking half of the population. This half is saying that half is stupid, and this half is saying this half is stupid, and they're showing evidences as why the other half of the parties is stupid, you know. And so, and that to me it turns us all into a bunch of tools. We're just a bunch of tool bags when we start behaving like that. Yeah, there's a lot I don't agree with certain parties on both sides. Okay, so for example, with the free, you know, well, let's not use the word free energy because it's not really free, but like alternative energy, let's take that for example. Solar panels do work. They do 100% work. You guys know that. You guys have solar panels. And it's like, but the energy industry is trying to tell us that they don't work. Well, half of them telling us that they do. You know, we have big wind that is making a mess of green energy. Quite frankly, I mean the way they're handling it, like in Washington State, a lot of the people over there they pay these huge power bills. As soon as the green energy moved in, their power bills went straight up. They were promised all this cheap energy. Well, it wasn't cheap, and but it's not because the energy is not cheap. The energy that's coming out of those things is in fact cheap. I've looked at the numbers. I've actually dug into it myself. They produce a tremendous amount of electricity. They create a tremendous amount of money for the investors who install those things. But the big corporate heads that are in control of all of this stuff, they set the prices because they're the only game in town. And they've set themselves up to be the only game in town. And that's not healthy for any economy. You have to have competition, and that's what drives the prices down. This guy sells his product a little cheaper, so you buy his product instead. And then this guy wants to sell his product, so he puts, you know, and it somehow balances, and it hits this equilibrium, you know, where it's affordable to the people, and the person producing the product can put a few dollars in his pocket as well, instead of just, you know, being price gouged all the time. But you know, with big wind, we had, you know, even though I don't agree with it, they've legalized marijuana in my state, you know, and everybody thought, oh, now we're going to have all this cheap weed, right? I don't smoke weed, but whatever, you know, if you guys smoke weed, you know, totally great. But the problem with legalizing it here was for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to bring big marijuana in. You know, these big corporate marijuana companies that just kind of just take over and push all the little guys out and control the taxations of it and everything else. Kind of weird that you have to go down and pay all your taxations to the state in cash. Almost seems like some kind of mob activity going on there. You know, and the same was true back in the days of right after Prohibition, you know, with the alcohol. So, The idea is to keep the masses dumbed down. We want to give them pharmaceuticals. We want to give them something to take their worries away, to keep them placated. And so that's sort of, and of course, we don't want to give it to them for free. We want to make them pay out the nose for it. So we're making huge money now too. We want to convince people we need these things. So, green energy works, but it doesn't work the way they're structuring it right now. Like oil right now. Oil works too. Let's be fair. Oil works. It's not the big demon that a lot of the company, a lot of people are saying that it is. But it's interesting. The people who are pushing the idea that oil is evil are actually the oil companies. Trace it back. You'll see that I'm right about this. And why would they do that? Why would they do that? You have to ask yourself, okay, why would an oil company who's making billions and billions of dollars off a product push the idea that their oil is evil? Well, it's very simple. They're already doing it in parts of Europe, and they have a carbon tax. And they've proposed it many times here in America, and I think they're already, re-implementing, they're rehashing a lot of these ideas of these carbon taxes. So you're using an evil product, and now you got to pay to use that evil product. And there's more profits to big oil. And it's just a vicious circle. Okay. Jim Thomas, the reason of the world's problems is Revelation 12:12. The devil has come down to you having great wrath. Facts, man. In fact, I promise I won't go too religious on you guys because it's not a religious channel, but you guys can check me out on my other channel, Prophecy Montana, on YouTube right here. We discuss this stuff constantly. We're constantly going to the Bible and talking about these things because I believe that the devil is in charge of this world. And there is a great controversy between Christ and Satan, and there is a great cosmic war that's taking place. And why do I feel that way? Because I've read the Bible, man, many, many times. And once you start to read it and understand this book, this very, very wonderful book called the Bible, it's undeniable that there's something going on. Prophecy, for example, in the Bible, if you go in the book of Daniel, okay, I'm going to just talk about it for a few seconds. You got me going, Jim. Thanks a lot. I mean, it's like one of my favorite topics ever. I'll promise just a few minutes and then I'll quit. Daniel chapter 7 talks about the world kingdoms. Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece, Rome, and then modern day Europe, right? 5 nations. And listed them out in perfect order. And all of the characteristics of these different nations. Babylon was the lion. Of course, that was the symbol of Babylon, right? Medo-Persia was the bear. Had 3 ribs in its mouth, which represented Libya, the 3 ancient worlds that were destroyed by the Medo-Persian Empire. Egypt, Libya, and one more, I can't remember the third one. And then after that came Greece, which was represented by the leopard. And of course, Greece was split up into 4, different territories afterwards. The 4 generals took over after Alexander the Great perished, and what historians are telling us was a drunken stupor, probably alcohol poisoning. And then Rome, of course, the iron monarchy of Rome, rose up into power, and then afterwards, modern day Europe as we know it. And of course, Revelation 13 speaks of the lamb-like beast coming up out of the earth. The lamb-like beast, a beast is a nation. If you read in Daniel chapter 8, you can find out that a beast, or Daniel chapter 7, a beast is a nation. And so if a beast is a nation, then this lamb-like beast, which the lamb is a representation of a Christian, would rise up out of the earth. And speaking of America, okay, that's enough. All right, I quit. All right, Jim, it's your fault, Jim. All right, I'm all for green energy, solar panels, and wind turbines too. Yeah, man, and and that's the thing. The right-wing party. I can agree with some of the stuff they're talking about, man. Like 1,000%. I consider myself a conservative of all conservatives, actually. But I don't agree with their assessment on green energy and several other things. I mean, Christian nationalism, I don't agree with either. I know that sounds funny coming from me, but Christian nationalism, I think, is a great evil that needs to be avoided at all costs. I mean, remember, we were talking about Rome, remember Rome. Just go back and remember Rome and what the Roman church did. Green energy works. I know it works because I do it. I do it myself. In fact, I was making so much power today, I had to turn my panels all off. And I had to turn my lights on, and I had to go upstairs and start a load of laundry and start using all the power that I had, opportunistic loads, And so, and of course, the problem with green energy is always the same. You have all this abundant energy during the day when the sun is shining. As soon as the sun goes down, then, you have nothing to fill that void. And that's where the big problem with the batteries are coming in. And I think, too, that the batteries have largely been, how do I say it? The market's being controlled with the batteries as well. I think a lot of these technologies, like lithium, for example, I mean, there's better products out there than lithium. They had a saline battery, and I know I should do my research before I talk about these things, but the saline batteries I've heard are super efficient, as good, if not better than the lithium. They charge faster, they last longer, more cycles, and just dirt cheap. I mean, salt is everywhere, and apparently lithium is everywhere too. But there is a process that has to go through that is rather dirty and concerning for some. And maybe maybe that's why they're doing it in a lot of these third world countries, so they can get away with a lot of the EPA issues that they run into with that, so and then that's another concern what people say as well. We have to use all this petroleum to make to make a wind turbine, all these petroleum products, all of the resins that go into the blades and all the oils that are used in the transmissions and the wires and just everything uses petroleum, and it does. But, there's places that we have sodium ion batteries. Yeah, that's probably the one, Pedja. I'm guessing. And so maybe that's what I was thinking of. And of course, we talked about the carbon diamond batteries as well. And which is actually not even really a battery. It's a power generator, much like a solar panel, but it's using depleted carbon-14 next to a diamond, which is a crystal, the same thing as a solar panel. And so it generates, the movement of electrons. And so, but of course, the energy industry would hate something like that because that's basically the definition of free energy. If, nothing's free. Something always costs something, solar panels are about as free as you can get now. So you can get, 10, 12 hours of free energy out of your solar panels. And that's about as good as it gets as far as I'm concerned. And of course, the wind is blowing like crazy outside right now. And the wind generator is also pumping out some great power. So, all right. So Kevin Toohey, green but not degrowth. Green but not degrowth. Can you elaborate a little bit on that comment, or was that a typo? So like we were explaining, there is a lot of problems with green energy, and I think mainly it's the industry monsters who are in charge of it. Not that it doesn't work, but there's big green, big wind, big solar, all of these big companies are a lot like the big oil, and they drive the prices basically. Big oil prices don't have to cost what they do. They can sell it for much cheaper than it's being sold, and I think we're being sold a lie that we have to pay this much, so it makes sense for them to go and mine it and everything else. And yeah, I don't know, man. There's a ton of energy out there, and it's all for the taking. And it's our as humans, it's our we should be responsible with the way we harvest it. Of course, whenever profits get involved, then the responsibility goes out the window, and it's just gimme, and we get as much as we can. at the expense of the generations afterwards. Okay, no typo. We need maximum economic growth. Oh, okay. So, I see what you're saying. Yeah. We really need thorium reactors in desert states. Can you explain what a thorium reactor is? Is that thorium? Is that an element, or is that like? Are we talking one of those mirrors that superheats the sodium mixture, the water? Because I'm not familiar with the word thorium, but yeah. So the the problem here is we're having a battle between green energy and big oil, and yeah, China succeeded. Kevin says, well, you know what, man? We were warned for years not to buy their products, and to buy in America, and none of us followed. Well, look, man, it's easy to go on eBay. I mean, be honest. How many products do you buy from China? I mean, oh, save nuclear. Yeah, okay. So we haven't talked about nuclear yet. Nuclear is indeed probably one of the best sources of energy that we have today that man knows of. And it's okay. Thorium is like safe nuclear. Okay, man, I'll have to Google that and check that out. Yeah, thanks for the heads up on that. A buddy of mine works in the nuclear industry over at Diablo Canyon Power Plant. I've worked there quite a bit myself as well, and so I know a little bit of the processes and everything that nuclear power goes through. And of course, everybody always looks at the Chernobyl incident to as an example, if you will, of what happens with I mean they use that to fuel this idea that nuclear power is bad. So Kevin says safe waste, and thorium is much better than nuclear. It's a breakthrough. Okay, I see. So it must be an element then. Instead of using uranium, then they're using thorium instead as the nuclear reactive agent. Perhaps maybe that's what we're talking about here. And if that's true, maybe thorium can be used in these old nuclear reactors safely then. And so the infrastructure is already there. But there is an evil plan to disassemble America. All of our, and I think this applies to all of the different nations out there. Really, I mean, our unique who we are is being broken down and being dismantled from the inside out, if you will. And it's quite sad, and we see this in all areas, really. The banks, with energy, we're seeing it in leadership, we're seeing it in individuality amongst ourselves. With now all these border crises and everything that are happening, we have, it just goes on, and it's never ending. It seems like an attack from all angles, really. And yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, if we had benevolent leaders, if we had, good politicians that were actually working on the behalf of the mankind instead of their special interest groups, because let's face it, let's pretend that one of us would run for office. I mean, all of a sudden you get these special interest groups, they're offering you big money. They're writing you big checks. Hey man, just remember me when you get into office, here's your campaign dollar. And boom, now you're in office, and now they're coming up to you and they're like, hey, remember that little favor that we talked about? Well, I'm calling you out on it right now. And so this is what's happening with a lot of these people, but they're being corrupted by the system. Maybe they were good at one time when they first came into office, and but man is corruptible, and we know this, especially if he's not grounded with a good moral background, that he's able to stand up for the right thing. And why should you stand up for the right thing when the right thing's only going to get you in trouble and get you hurt? And the wrong thing is going to get you paid. You know what I'm saying? And you got your family to feed. And that's how a lot of these people are looking at it and justifying it in their minds. But it's at the cost of everybody else, And so it's a very selfish existence. And I don't know, man. We live in a very corrupt world, very corrupt society. A lot of things wrong with it, and I don't, I don't have all the answers. And but um, but yeah, as far as individual preparedness, I think we should have a level of that. And I think today we were talking about housing and stuff like that, and so a safe place to live. Well, there may not be a safe place to live. May be the perfect house to live in. There may not be the perfect solar wind setup. There may not be the perfect energy solution in this world that we live in. Um, and especially with so many crooked politicians and leaders out there. But hey, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks so much for hanging in there and putting up with my mindless babbling, going on and on about different things. But yeah, man, if you guys would hit that like button, if you've enjoyed this live stream thus far, and subscribe if you guys haven't already, and we'll see you guys next Sunday at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. So God bless, and you guys be careful out there. Thanks for watching.